Buried beneath the farmland, rivers, and quiet forests of Illinois lies a forgotten world, one older than the textbooks admit, and more mysterious than science dares to explain. From geometric mounds that defy modern math to artifacts no culture claims, this land holds secrets carved in silence. Tonight, we journey into the strange and ancient corners of Illinois, where history isn't just hidden, it's deliberately missing. In southern Illinois, beneath the better-known Kincaid Mounds, lies something largely undocumented, a wall of stone blocks buried deep beneath the soil, discovered by accident in the early 20th century, when workers dug into a trench meant for irrigation. The wall isn't part of the known Mississippian culture ruins above. Instead, it runs in a straight line beneath the ceremonial mound, consisting of large rectangular stones, some weighing over 200 pounds, interlocked without mortar. Early archaeologists assumed it was a natural rock alignment, until one stone was found etched with a faint spiral, unlike any known Mississippian symbol. Ground-penetrating radar scans in the 1990s confirmed that the wall continues for at least 100 feet under the earth, bending gently at the far end, suggesting architectural planning. However, official excavations halted shortly after funding was pulled. No official documentation exists beyond brief mentions in out-of-print local journals. Many now believe this wall predates the mound builders entirely, belonging to a lost society with unknown construction methods and symbolic systems. Today, the stones remain underground, unseen, an entire engineered structure hidden beneath a mound already considered sacred, its original purpose unknown and its builders erased. Most visitors know Cahokia for Monk's Mound, the largest prehistoric earthen structure in the Americas, but few are told what was detected 3 miles southeast of the main site during an aerial LiDAR survey in 2011. Beneath a suburban housing development lies a rectangular plateau rising in stepped layers, completely buried and invisible to the naked eye. Though dismissed as a natural elevation, old excavation notes from the 1930s show symmetrical arrangements of soil layers, each compacted and shaped with clear human intention. Researchers who reviewed the LiDAR images found the structure echoed the shape of a ziggurat more than a burial mound, with 4 ascending levels and stair-like ridges leading up each side. What makes this more compelling is that early French explorers in the 1700s recorded a flat-topped temple hill southeast of Cahokia that was already eroding. Could this buried shape be that long-lost mound? The site has never been formally investigated, as it now lies under private property. Yet residents report odd magnetic fluctuations, GPS malfunctions, and even a humming sound when standing near specific backyard corners. What's buried here might rival Monk's Mound in significance, if anyone ever dares dig again. Before Lake Shelbyville was formed in the 1960s, the region was home to forested valleys and rocky outcrops. But in the final surveys before damming, one team reported a stone platform, perfectly square and set with low rectangular blocks, discovered in a hollow that would soon be flooded. Some referred to it as a sunken courtyard. It wasn't documented in public reports, and when the lake filled, it disappeared. For decades, local divers have reported feeling stone edges beneath their feet while swimming, aligned in square or circular formations. One diver described a stepped ledge that felt like a giant staircase, descending into deeper water. Local authorities deny its existence, claiming no ruins were submerged, but aerial photographs from the 1950s show a suspiciously flat stone pattern in the exact location before the flood. If true, the structure would be one of the few aquatic ruins in Illinois, predating recorded civilizations and possibly ceremonial in nature. No efforts have been made to investigate further, and permits for dive surveys are routinely denied. Whatever lies beneath Lake Shelbyville now rests in total darkness, hidden beneath decades of silt and silence. Cave-in rock is best known for its role in river piracy, but few speak of the chambers deeper inside the cave system, chambers that appear carved, not eroded. In the early 1800s, explorers wrote of narrow passages leading deeper than expected, some ending in symmetrical hollows with ceiling vaults shaped like domes. These weren't natural caves. They were smoothed, consistent, even patterned. In 1892, a group of spelunkers claimed to find strange triangular markings inside one such chamber, arranged in a repeating spiral. Their claims were never followed up. Since then, structural collapses and state restrictions have sealed off many inner paths. Modern explorers say electronic devices behave strangely within these deep pockets. Batteries drain rapidly, and GPS fails to lock. Some suspect the chambers are part of a forgotten underground complex. Partially natural but intentionally modified, carvings still remain, faint, indecipherable, and rarely acknowledged. What purpose did these inner spaces serve? Shelter? Ceremony? Storage for relics long since removed? Or are they the final remnants of a civilization who understood stone, shadow, and silence better than we do today? During construction work in Nauvoo, in the early 2000s, an underground tunnel was discovered, a brick-lined corridor, nearly 5 feet high, descending beneath the modern street grid. Workers halted after only 12 feet of exposure before officials ordered the tunnel resealed. It was never part of the Mormon-era architecture documented in the area, and the brick pattern did not match 19th century design. What's more troubling is what workers described inside: not a tunnel, but a corridor, turning left, then right, with strange metal rings embedded in the walls, and the scent of something ancient and decaying lingering in the air. Old residents have long spoken of a vault city under Nauvoo, built by unknown hands. Some say it was tied to Masonic rituals, others to prehistoric settlers who built beneath the ground. The entrance was paved over. Official records now claim the structure was a collapsed sewer extension, but the photographs taken, quietly circulated among locals, show something far older: a sealed passage, perfectly preserved, a mystery just beneath the sidewalk. Hikers in the southern edge of the Shawnee National Forest have occasionally reported finding what they call the stone silo, a deep circular depression in the forest floor with walls made of carefully stacked limestone blocks. It appears suddenly in areas not shown on any topographical map, then is gone weeks later, covered by growth, or simply missing. One camper who descended it in 2017 reported a floor lined with hexagonal tiles and a perfectly round ceiling opening above. No debris, no artifacts, just emptiness. Yet compass needles behave erratically around it, and cell signals vanish entirely. When a group returned to map the location, they found nothing, just forest. Locals have legends of a well too deep to echo, and some believe this silo is part of that same mystery. Whether a grain storage system, ceremonial pit, or ancient observatory, the structure doesn't belong in the forest. It shouldn't exist, and yet it does, sometimes. In 1915, near the banks of the Mississippi River in Rock Island County, a copper disc was uncovered by a farmer clearing his field. Perfectly circular, roughly the size of a dinner plate, and etched with concentric rings, the object was unlike any native copper ornament ever recorded. Most copper artifacts in the region are tools or simple adornments, but this was different: ornate, symmetrical, and clearly deliberate in its design. Archaeologists who briefly examined it claimed the etchings resembled a form of proto-writing, though no known Mississippian or Hopewell script exists. Curiously, the disc was composed of nearly pure copper, hammered flat with a level of uniformity that would require controlled heating, an ability not known to the region's ancient cultures at the time. The disc was sent to a museum for further study and never seen again. In its place, a generic Mississippian pendant was placed on display with no detailed record, but old photos taken by the farmer's family show the object clearly, otherworldly, and out of time. What was it? A calendar? A map? A seal? And why did it vanish so quickly after discovery? In 1962, a hiker along the Mackinac River in Tazewell County, stumbled upon a boulder partially buried in silt, bearing a face carved into its front, human but stylized, with exaggerated features and wide staring eyes. The carving had weathered deeply, suggesting great age, but the lines were still visible: arched brows, a ridged nose, and a narrow mouth, shaped in what could be a snarl or chant. The stone didn't match local indigenous styles, nor colonial grave markers. Some believe it resembles Olmec heads from Mexico, though vastly smaller. Local archaeologists inspected it briefly, labeled it as likely natural erosion, and left it untouched. But the hiker returned years later to find it missing, removed, with no record. Photos taken that day remain, sparking occasional interest among amateur researchers. No similar artifact has surfaced in the region since. Was it a relic from a forgotten group, a boundary marker, a spiritual guardian? Whatever it was, it left a human impression, not just on stone, but on those who saw it. During a flood recession in the late 1980s, a strange item was recovered from the banks of Casquilla Island, a blade, shaped like a dagger, made entirely of polished bone. Unlike crude flint or chipped tools, this weapon was smoothed, balanced, and edged, clearly designed for precision. Its handle bore a single spiral groove, worn by repeated use. Tests later confirmed the bone came from a species no longer found in the region, possibly extinct. Though archaeologists acknowledged its craftsmanship, they were baffled by its context. It was found in a layer of silt far beneath modern occupation levels, deeper than any European settlement debris. The site was flooded again before further exploration could occur. Some theorized it was ceremonial. Others suspected it belonged to a culture lost before even oral tradition began. Yet none could explain the preservation, the design, or why such an object would be hidden beneath layers of untouched earth. A weapon made from extinction itself, unearthed only to vanish again beneath the river's restless currents. In 1979, construction workers, digging for a septic system near a farmhouse in Effingham County, uncovered what appeared to be a solid clay cylinder, 6 inches tall, perfectly smooth, and capped at both ends. Thinking it was a strange chunk of pottery, they cracked it open. Inside were coiled strips of bark-thin wood, wrapped in some sort of resin, along with what looked like seeds or grains, petrified in place. One worker took photos before local officials confiscated the object, citing safety concerns. No one has seen it since. What makes the story more disturbing is what researchers later realized. The object resembled a memory cylinder, a concept theorized in lost civilizations. Containers meant to preserve language, data, or culture in non-paper form. The script, if there was one, was never translated. The resin samples, if tested, were never published. Today, even the family who lived at the farmhouse says the land feels different. Tools rust faster, animals avoid that corner of the yard, and one of the workers claims to still dream about the symbols etched inside. A buried archive, a warning, a capsule never meant to be opened. High on a rock ledge, overlooking the Galena River, is a carving that has confounded geologists and historians alike for over a century. It's a 5-pointed star, almost 3 feet across, deeply etched into a sandstone face. A feat difficult, even with modern tools. The edges are crisp, and the lines align perfectly with magnetic north. There's no nearby quarry, no scaffolding access, and no historical record of any culture in the region using this particular symbol, let alone at that scale. Some believe it's a colonial-era Masonic mark, though it predates known lodges in the area. Others think it was an astronomical marker, aligned with solstice events. Local native tribes have no stories tied to the symbol, nor does any regional folklore explain its presence. Attempts to date it have failed due to erosion, but hikers still climb the ledge to see it, unchanged, unmoving, staring up at the sky, as it has for who knows how long. Was it a signature, a warning, or something carved not to be seen from the ground, but from the air? Atop a ridge near Alton, Illinois, where the land meets the Mississippi River in a dramatic bluff, a hiker unearthed a small mask in 2003, no larger than a child's hand, carved from milky quartz. The face was featureless, save for deep-set eyes and a sharply contoured nose. It was cool to the touch, unnaturally heavy, and perfectly symmetrical. Experts were called in, but none could place its origin. Quartz carving of that precision wasn't typical for the region, and the mask bore no signs of tool marks, just smooth, almost organic shaping. Within weeks, the mask was relocated to a private institution and hasn't been seen since. The site where it was found now bears warning signs: unstable ground, do not enter. Some believe the mask was ceremonial, used in burial or initiation rites. Others argue it's proof of long-forgotten trade routes, reaching from crystal-rich regions deep in the Appalachians. But some, quietly, wonder if it was not a mask at all, but a likeness, not made for the living, but for whatever once watched from the bluffs, before names were written and maps were drawn. Before Carlisle Lake was created in the 1960s, surveys of the land revealed more than just farmhouses and rural homesteads. Deep in the valleys and low plains were unmapped stone foundations, some circular, others rectangular, and many without roads or recorded history tied to them. Local accounts from as early as the 1800s spoke of ruins in the woods that no settler could explain. One farmer claimed to have found carved steps descending into a pit before it was swallowed by rising waters. Since the lake's formation, divers have reported strange submerged platforms, oddly shaped rock alignments, and patterns that don't match known settlement styles. During droughts, the water sometimes recedes far enough to expose stone walls, perfectly laid, square-edged, and untouched by modern tools. Officials attribute them to abandoned cabins or erosion, but beneath the surface lies a drowned grid, mapped only by sonar and memory, hinting at a vanished settlement built before our written history dared to notice. Just west of Peoria, near Kickapoo Creek, aerial LiDAR scans in 2014 revealed outlines of what appear to be roads, enclosures, and rectangular platforms hidden beneath dense forest growth. No records mention a town in that area, no trails lead to it, but when explorers followed the path of the scans on foot, they discovered stones stacked in grids, earth piled into subtle terraces, and shards of ceramics that didn't match any known colonial wear. Trees grow over the remains, and moss has hidden much of the detail, but the layout is undeniable. Some archaeologists believe it was a village wiped out before contact, perhaps by disease or migration. Others think it may be a spiritual site, deliberately abandoned, yet the silence surrounding it feels engineered. There are no legends, no stories, no names attached. It's as if an entire chapter was cut from Illinois' history and buried beneath a canopy of leaves and indifference. Centuries ago, the Kaskaskia River Valley teemed with life, one of the richest ecological and cultural corridors in the region. Yet, in the floodplain, archaeologists in the 1930s found traces of something older and more mysterious. Linear mounds running parallel to the riverbank, some over 300 feet long. Unlike the conical mounds of Cahokia, these were narrow, flat-topped, and precisely aligned. Early researchers believed they might be remnants of a trading network, roads, or even symbolic pathways, but then the river changed course. Modern development buried much of what remained. Today, few even know they existed. Occasional aerial scans reveal faint outlines in plowed fields, linear shadows that shouldn't be there. Locals sometimes report anomalies in those fields, tools that break too easily, plants that grow unevenly, birds that won't land. If these mounds served a deeper purpose, ritual, astronomical, or otherwise, we may never know. The river that once cradled them now hides their secret in silt and silence. In 2006, workers planting vines on newly purchased farmland near Cobden discovered an opening in the earth, an angled shaft descending into darkness. It was not a well. The walls were lined with sandstone blocks, fitted tightly, forming a smooth tunnel that extended over 20 feet, before terminating in a square chamber. Within, they found nothing but dust and a strange dampness. No tools, no bones, no pottery. But the chamber's ceiling had been blackened by fire, and one of the stones bore a mark, 3 vertical lines crossing a horizontal one, deeply incised. Archaeologists arrived, examined it briefly, and sealed the shaft. Officially, it was deemed a 19th century root cellar, but those who were there say otherwise. The precision, the engineering, the silence, it felt older, deliberate, designed for something not meant to be found. Since then, vines planted above the site have failed repeatedly. The ground rejects new growth, as if disturbed by a memory too old to name. Maps from the late 1800s list a place in Jackson County called Crow's Hollow, marked by only a few buildings and a dirt road. But by 1920, it was gone. Today, there's no town, no ruins, and no road. The only trace is a single stone chimney rising from the trees, partially collapsed, with no house around it. Local legends speak of a village that spoke too much to the sky, whatever that means. In 1973, a surveyor claimed to find stone foundations forming a concentric circle pattern in the area, too symmetrical for cabins, too large for barns. He submitted his notes to a historical society. Weeks later, he withdrew them. No reason given. Modern aerial imagery shows nothing but forest. But on foot, there are places where the trees grow in perfect rings, where moss avoids certain stones, and where radios lose all signal. Crow's Hollow may be gone from paper, but it lingers in the roots. In the Mississippi River near Quincy lies Prairie Island, a small, uninhabited stretch of land rarely visited outside of duck hunting season. But 19th century river pilots told of old stone walks and half-buried steps at the island's edge, revealed when the river ran low. In 1982, a severe drought dropped the waterline enough for kayakers to explore. They found a sunken terrace paved with flat stone slabs, laid in an arc like an open fan, half covered in sediment. One slab bore a square hole, too perfect to be natural. The river rose before more could be studied. No return expeditions were allowed. Today, Prairie Island is a wildlife refuge, off-limits to development. But rumors persist that beneath the grass and water lies a ruined ceremonial platform, older than Cahokia, built by hands no longer remembered. Some say it still waits for the river to pull back and expose what time and maps have tried to erase. In the 1970s, near the quiet town of Campsville in Calhoun County, archaeologists excavating a prehistoric burial site stumbled upon something they didn't expect: an intact stone sarcophagus. Measuring nearly 7 feet in length, the rectangular tomb was carved from local limestone, sealed with a massive lid. Inside was a single skeleton laid in an east-west orientation, cradled by a bed of powdered ochre and fragments of woven bark cloth. This burial style didn't match the known customs of the nearby Mississippian or Hopewell cultures. More puzzling, the skeletal remains were of a man over 6.5 feet tall, unusually large for prehistoric populations in the region. Tests later revealed anomalies in the bone density and the tooth structure, raising theories about possible outside origin or genetic drift. While officials documented the find, the sarcophagus was quietly relocated and stored in a university archive, where it's rarely displayed and never spoken of in public lectures. Some researchers suspect the artifact is evidence of a separate burial tradition, a forgotten group with access to advanced masonry techniques. Whatever the truth, the sarcophagus challenges Illinois' standard timeline of burial practices and opens doors to a deeper past most historians aren't yet ready to explore. Cahokia is one of the most studied ancient sites in North America, but not every detail fits the narrative archaeologists prefer to tell. In the early 1960s, excavations of Mound 72 revealed a shocking discovery: a mass burial pit containing over 270 individuals. Some had been carefully placed in bundles, others were laid out side by side, but a disturbing number showed signs of violent death. Several had their hands removed. Others had their skulls crushed. Many of the skeletons were female, buried without accompanying artifacts or offerings, which defied the usual patterns of elite interments. More curiously, the pit was aligned along a solar axis, as if the mass burial was part of a larger cosmological ritual, rather than an act of war or disease containment. For decades, experts argued whether the site was the result of human sacrifice, a caste system purging, or something else entirely. What remains unspoken is the presence of unusual bone structures among a handful of the buried, elongated crania, and bones-bearing scars that appear unnatural. The explanations have ranged from deformity to binding practices, but none fully explain the sheer volume or purpose of the burial. The pit remains one of Cahokia's darkest, most unexplained features. At Dixon Mounds near Lewistown, Illinois, archaeologists uncovered a sprawling burial ground containing hundreds of burials spanning over 1,000 years of occupation. Most followed predictable patterns, flexed or extended positions, modest grave goods, signs of stratified society. But in a separate cluster, just beyond the main grouping, researchers unearthed a series of deep pits filled with blackened soil, charred logs, and burned human bones. The bones were fragmented, heat distorted, and in some cases, partially fused with stone. These weren't cremation burials. There were no urns, no ash layers, no ceremonial markers. Some bones were placed deliberately along the edge of pits, as if forming a ring. One pit contained what looked like a large stone platform that had cracked under intense heat. None of these features matched Mississippian or woodland customs. No oral histories from local tribes mention them. Some believe they may represent a separate culture entirely, one that practiced destructive rituals tied to fire. Others believe these pits mark a period of social upheaval or mass punishment. Either way, the burned remains tell a story that mainstream archaeology hasn't yet deciphered, and the more researchers study them, the more questions arise about what rituals once scorched the Illinois earth. In central Illinois, the Noble Whiting site near Hayworth has long been known as a small Hopewell-era village, but a 1990 excavation turned up something that still unsettles local historians: rows of child graves, arranged with eerie uniformity. Over 20 juvenile skeletons were buried in tight proximity, all within the same layer of soil. Most showed no trauma, disease, or malnutrition. What they did share, however, was a peculiar grave good. Each child was buried with a carved stone disc, polished and incised with spiral patterns. These discs do not match any known ceremonial item from the Hopewell culture. Even stranger, the graves formed a crescent shape when viewed from above, with the oldest child buried at the center. Theories have ranged from a ritual sacrifice to a tragic illness, but no definitive cause has ever been established. Some fringe researchers believe the burial layout may align with lunar cycles or astronomical events, suggesting the children may have been part of a ceremonial rite lost to history. The community itself vanished shortly after this event, with no signs of fire or conflict. It's as though something ended their story and buried its memory beneath the fields of McLean County. In 2005, a hiker along Rock Creek in LaSalle County discovered a human skull half buried in the embankment after heavy rain. When authorities retrieved it, they were startled by its age. It was estimated to be over 3,500 years old, placing it far outside the timeline of known settlements in that region. More disturbing was its condition. The skull was elongated, unusually robust, and had shallow carvings along the cheekbones, markings unlike anything seen in regional cultures. No other bones were found nearby. There was no burial pit, no village site, no cultural context. Just one isolated skull, perfectly preserved, as though deliberately placed. Some forensic analysts noted signs of polishing on the skull, indicating it may have been exposed and handled for a long time before burial. Theories have ranged from ancient traders, isolated ritual practitioners, to even non-human origins. Without more remains, no answers have emerged. The skull now sits in storage at a local university, rarely shown, never studied publicly. A single silent relic, out of place, out of time, and still out of reach. Deep within the sandstone cliffs and hidden grottos of Shawnee National Forest, cavers and hikers have whispered about secret burial chambers, places where skeletons sit upright in alcoves, facing inward as though in silent council. In 1981, an amateur spelunker documented one such chamber with Polaroid photos. 3 skeletons seated around a stone basin, fragments of woven reed mats beneath them, no weapons, no tools. Just the quiet suggestion of ritual. The entrance collapsed the following year after a landslide, and despite attempts, the chamber has never been rediscovered. What's most perplexing is that the burial style has no match in the archaeological record of the area. The seated position is rare in North America, more common in ancient Central Asian practices. The location, high within a cliff, suggests intentional inaccessibility. Some believe the chamber was a secret resting place for spiritual leaders. Others say it wasn't a burial at all, but a form of suspended preservation. Whatever the case, the legend of Shawnee's cliffside crypts persists, quietly passed from hiker to hiker, waiting for the day when one of those trails leads back to the sealed mouth of history itself. Millstone Bluff in southern Illinois is best known for its ancient rock carvings, but there's a feature that often goes unmentioned: a ring of stones near the bluff's eastern slope, partially buried and grown over with moss. The circle spans roughly 30 feet in diameter, made of upright slabs spaced evenly like teeth. Archaeologists have labeled it a possible council ring, but aerial imaging reveals something stranger. The stones align with the sunrise and sunset on solstices, and at equinox, a shadow falls perfectly across a central depression. There's no documentation of such solar alignment in this region from known indigenous cultures. Even more puzzling, the stones themselves don't match the local bedrock. They were transported from miles away. Some bear grooves that form no recognizable symbols, just repeated spirals and zigzags. Legends from the area speak of a talking circle, where silence could be heard, and dreams became real. Whether ceremonial site, calendar, or something else entirely, the Millstone Bluff ring remains unexcavated. No one has dared to disturb it fully, as if even modern researchers understand. Some alignments weren't just astronomical, they were spiritual boundaries, and this one, set in stone, may mark a forgotten border between worlds. Meridosia Lake, once a vast and thriving wetland along the Illinois River, hides more than ecological history. It may be covering ancient monuments. Early 20th century aerial photographs show a cluster of low circular mounds just west of the lake's southern edge. These formations are absent from modern maps, now submerged under marshland and overgrowth. When LIDAR scans were conducted for conservation, a pattern emerged: 3 concentric rings, each larger than the last, forming what appears to be a giant target embedded in the earth. In the center lies a square-shaped depression. No tools, bones, or pottery have ever been retrieved, but the geometry alone, so exact, so purposeful, defies coincidence. Some believe it may have been a ceremonial structure, similar to the famous Woodhenge in Cahokia. Others think it could be a solar calendar. The site remains unstudied, too wet and unstable to excavate. But when the water recedes during droughts, outlines reappear. Ducks land where once perhaps priests walked, and the wind moves in a circle, like it remembers the shape the ground used to hold. Illinois may have its own Stonehenge, but right now it's lost in the reeds. In the heart of Pope County, near the natural springs that give Dixon Springs its name, lies a mound unlike any other in the region. Not a circle, not a square, but a perfect hexagon. First mapped by surveyors in the 1930s, and then forgotten, the mound rises only a few feet, its angles eroded by time, but the original form remains clear in satellite imagery. 6 sides, equal in length, with a flat center platform, and narrow ditches along its perimeter. No Mississippian site in Illinois contains a hexagonal earthwork. None in North America do. The geometry is too precise, too deliberate. When a soil core was taken in 2004, it revealed layered construction, compacted clay, ash, and a thin layer of crushed quartz. The site sits atop a limestone shelf that resonates when tapped, and magnetic anomalies have been recorded in its center. No artifacts were found, but the absence raises more questions than answers. Was it ceremonial, geometric art, or perhaps an acoustic device for rituals long erased? For now, the hexagon holds its shape and its secrets beneath tall grass and forgotten trails. Giant City State Park is known for its massive stone formations, narrow passageways, and looming bluffs that look like something out of another world. But tucked between two lesser-known trails is something far stranger. A row of stones stretching nearly 60 feet in a straight, unnatural line. Each stone is roughly the size of a small boulder, laid with mathematical precision, like dominoes of ancient design. They're not part of the natural bedrock, nor have they tumbled from above. Local guides sometimes mention them as boundary stones, though no historical records back up the claim. One theory suggests it could be a causeway or processional path, perhaps leading to a now erased ceremonial site. The stones are evenly spaced, but one near the center has a deep groove in the shape of an arrow, pointing north. Dowsers report unusual energy at the site. GPS units tend to fail when placed atop the stones. Whether intentional or the work of ancient engineers lost to time, the stone row at Giant City breaks every rule of natural formation, and in the silence of the woods, it still points somewhere. In 1979, a farmer tilling his land in Edwards County uncovered a series of post holes that formed a startling pattern. 3 concentric squares, each corner perfectly aligned to the cardinal directions. The wood had long since rotted, but the soil stains remained. Further investigation revealed symmetrical ditches extending from each side, forming what looked like a mandala etched into the Illinois prairie. The geometric complexity didn't match any known indigenous structures in the area. No bones, no artifacts, just alignment. Over time, the pattern disappeared under new crops and machinery. But in unusually dry summers, when the wheat turns brittle, the pattern re-emerges as lighter patches. The farmer's children called it the ghost square. Some archaeologists believe it may have been a calendar or a form of cosmic map. Others think it was symbolic, geometry made sacred, but no tribe in the region claims it. No textbooks mention it. It appeared, revealed itself briefly, and faded again, like a memory the land itself tries to whisper when the wind turns still. The Shawnee Hills are known for their scenic beauty, but hikers who venture off the trail sometimes report stumbling upon low, stacked rock mounds in places where no path should lead. These aren't natural piles. They are precise, often forming small spirals or straight lines ending in a larger central cairn. Most contain no artifacts, just stone, placed with quiet intention. One formation discovered in 2018 had 7 mounds in a crescent pattern, with the central cairn aligned to the winter solstice sunrise. When surveyed, magnetic anomalies were found near the largest mound. Others found tiny quartz fragments buried in the dirt, too small for tools, too numerous to be random. The mounds are undocumented in any regional surveys. The land is protected, but no excavation has ever been authorized. These rock markers raise questions about who once lived in the highlands before maps were drawn, and what they used these silent formations for. Were they ritual sites, burial grounds, waypoints in a spiritual geography we've long since forgotten? The stones don't speak, but their arrangement suggests someone once knew how. Before Carlisle Lake was created in the 1960s, the land it now covers held multiple settlements, including the ruins of older, undocumented foundations near the Kaskaskia River. During the damming process, surveyors noted an odd grid-like pattern of stones far from known habitation sites, some rectangular, others circular, These formations were submerged when the reservoir was filled, and no formal excavation was done. But during severe droughts, when water levels drop, parts of these foundations reappear. Stone steps leading to nowhere, corner walls, even what looks like a broken arch. Divers report strange acoustics underwater, where sound seems to echo in enclosed spaces. In 2006, one diver filmed what appeared to be a carved lintel resting atop a sunken wall, but the footage was dismissed as inconclusive. The Army Corps of Engineers claims no such ruins were officially documented. Still, residents speak of an old stone place that stood long before settlers, long before survey maps, now sleeping beneath the silt, waiting to be uncovered again. Rend Lake in southern Illinois is a man-made reservoir, and its creation submerged hundreds of acres of farmland, roads, and homesteads. But scattered among these are whispered reports of something else, a buried town that doesn't appear on official maps. Fishermen and divers claim to have seen stone foundations deep below, and in one case, an arched bridge made of red brick, too old to be part of any 20th century infrastructure. Locals say the town was never named. It existed only in rumor, referred to as the Dead Grid, where no birds flew and no tools ever rusted. When the water is low, ghostly outlines appear on satellite imagery, squares, rows, outlines of what could have been streets or fields. No agency has admitted to surveying this grid, and all attempts to dive in its direction have met murky conditions and blocked paths. Whatever lies beneath Rend Lake may be more than forgotten houses. It could be the bones of a settlement older than records, erased not by accident, but intention. Near the confluence of the Illinois and Mississippi rivers, once stood a village older than any logbook mentions, spoken of by early French traders as a place where the stones sang. This unnamed village was described as having carved stone basins and circular houses made from timber reinforced with earth and clay, but no modern archaeological record confirms its location. Floods in the 1800s and later river redirection projects seem to have swallowed it whole. Modern sonar scans of Meridosia Bay show irregularities along the riverbed, straight lines, circular mounds, and what may be steps carved into stone. In 1992, a barge anchor reportedly caught on something solid beneath 40 feet of water. The chain pulled loose a slab with etchings no one could identify. It was taken to a local historical society, which mysteriously lost the artifact. To this day, the area remains unexplored. No one knows what village once stood there, only that it had no name, and that the river tried to erase it. In Jackson County lies Devil's Kitchen Lake, formed in the mid-20th century as part of a flood control project. But according to old quarry maps, the land beneath the reservoir once included a vast limestone cavern system, only partially surveyed before inundation. Local divers speak of underwater tunnels, arched ceilings, and hollow spaces beneath the lake floor that seem to breathe, sending up occasional air bubbles. In 1974, a cave diving team claimed to have reached a massive underwater chamber, complete with carved stone supports and what looked like stacked crates made from stone, not wooden debris. Their lights failed, so did their compasses. When they resurfaced, their footage was damaged. Officials have since banned further dives without permits. Some claim the caverns were used for pre-colonial rituals. Others whisper of older beings, buried by flood and time, whose chambers were never meant to be disturbed. The truth lies below, sealed in dark, freezing water. At the edge of Horseshoe Lake in Madison County, visitors sometimes notice a strange sight: dim trees, ancient and dead, rising from the water in symmetrical rows. These are not random snags or storm debris. They are stumps of hardwoods that appear to have been planted deliberately, an orchard or a grove submerged long ago. But records show no such planting occurred here, and no nearby settlement matches the scale needed for such landscaping. During particularly low water levels, hikers have reported discovering stone markers between the stumps, short, rounded pillars that resemble grave markers or trail indicators. Some are engraved with shallow, curving lines, no writing, just patterns. The grove is inaccessible by boat due to thick vegetation, and attempts to map it via drone often return static. Whether this submerged grove was sacred, ceremonial, or merely forgotten, no one knows. But it remains intact beneath the still water, a quiet monument to something lost. In the 1980s, utility workers inspecting Lake Springfield's perimeter noticed something curious. A straight, submerged line of stone running parallel to the shore for nearly 300 feet. When probed, the line revealed itself to be a wall of fitted stone blocks, stacked 3 layers deep. It vanished into the lake bed at either end. Engineers dismissed it as part of an old farmstead or bridge footing, but local historians found no record of any structure on that site before the lake was filled in the 1930s. In 1995, a scuba team attempted to explore the wall's length, but was stopped when silt storms clouded visibility. Unnaturally, they claimed. The wall appears in sonar like a seam stitched into the lake floor. No other sections of masonry have been discovered nearby. Some speculate it once encircled a settlement, a fortress, or even a ceremonial compound that now lies buried beneath the lake's surface. Others believe it's older, something built when the land looked nothing like it does today. Whatever its origin, the wall remains unacknowledged, unexplained, and hidden beneath the water. In the rocky outcrops bordering Shawnee National Forest, hikers in the 1930s discovered what appeared to be natural limestone alcoves, but inside some of them were skeletal remains, unlike any found in local cemeteries. The bodies had been placed in a curled fetal position and sealed inside oval-shaped hollows, carved directly into the stone, almost like ancient pods. These weren't coffins. There was no wood, no tools, no ceremony as we know it, just stone and bone. Most of the remains were removed and reburied without forensic study, but one archaeologist noted that the positioning was consistent across multiple pods, always curled, always facing east. And the few grave goods recovered, a smoothed obsidian bead, a petrified wood shard, came from hundreds of miles away. Locals whispered that these weren't graves at all, but cradle stones, for something meant to awaken, not decay. Today, the alcoves are inaccessible, fenced off, and unmarked, but the forest still feels heavier there, as if something ancient sleeps under stone. Farmers near Hollow Hill, in the late 1800s, uncovered graves that defied their expectations. These weren't dug into the earth, they were built above it, enclosed in mounds of river rock, and sealed with tightly packed clay. Inside, the bodies were seated upright, surrounded by concentric rings of animal bones and small carved figurines made of fired clay. Local records show at least 11 such burials, all facing toward a central point, a hilltop that now holds only a solitary tree. The artifacts were carted off to private collectors, and most of the mounds have since eroded or been ploughed under. But one intact burial was secretly documented in the 1950s. Inside, the skull had been painted with red ochre, and the figurines placed around it all showed the same motif. A figure with wide eyes, no mouth, and arms raised skyward. Some say these were shamanic burials. Others suggest a now lost death rite specific to a vanished culture. But no one has ever found a settlement or village near the burial site. Just the graves, as if the dead were placed here long after the living had moved on, or disappeared entirely. When the Mississippi River rerouted itself in the 19th century, it cut through parts of Illinois that were once thriving with ancient habitation. On Kaskiyeh Island, early settlers reported finding a mass burial chamber, a pit lined with stacked bones, all human, all arranged in rows as if filed by age. This ossuary was capped with flat river stones, each marked with simple etchings, lines, circles, and arrow shapes. But a flood in 1881 swept the ossuary away, and the land was eventually overtaken by river sediment. Today, no trace of the burial chamber remains, except for local legends. However, in 2003, a construction crew dredging part of the island unearthed dozens of bones packed tightly together, reawakening the old stories. The remains were reburied without investigation, but divers still find worked stones and bone fragments along the river's edge after storms. Some believe the ossuary was ceremonial. Others say it was created in response to a mass death event, perhaps a plague or sacrifice. The river may have hidden it, but it hasn't erased it. The dead still drift beneath the waters of Caskia. In the 1920s, amateur archaeologists excavated a series of small burial mounds near what is now Springfield. What they found caused immediate controversy. Human skulls with unusual cranial elongation, clearly shaped intentionally during early childhood. The practice of skull elongation is documented in parts of South America and the ancient Near East, but not in the heart of Illinois. The bones were hastily catalogued and sent to a university for study, but were soon lost in a fire, or so the story goes. No official report was ever published. Still, black and white photographs survive, showing the distorted crania in profile, eerily smooth and alien-like in appearance. Local oral histories, passed down from indigenous families, tell of a people with sky-shaped heads who lived apart from the villages and vanished without battle or trace. Whether these skulls were part of a spiritual elite, an isolated cultural practice, or something more mysterious remains unknown. What is certain is that someone in ancient Illinois deliberately shaped the heads of their dead and left us with a mystery that science still can't fully explain. In a burial uncovered near the Rock River in the 1940s, archaeologists found something deeply anomalous. A series of transparent crystal beads placed around the neck and chest of a young female skeleton. The burial was shallow, covered by only a light layer of soil, yet perfectly preserved. The beads weren't glass, they were clear quartz, polished to a smooth finish, each with a hole drilled cleanly through the center. Such craftsmanship is not consistent with known prehistoric tool sets in the region. More baffling was their luminescence under UV light. They emitted a soft glow. No other site in Illinois has produced similar artifacts. Some believe the beads were ceremonial. Others claim they came from far-off trade routes. A few fringe researchers argue they weren't human-made at all. The remains were eventually moved to a museum archive, but the beads have since gone missing. What lingers are only the field notes, a few photographs, and the questions: who polished crystal to perfection? Why bury it with a child? And what, exactly, did the light-sensitive quartz mean to a civilization long gone? While most of Cahokia's mysteries are centered around Monk's Mound and its surrounding plazas, one overlooked ridge to the east once held something stranger than earthworks: a single stone sarcophagus, unearthed in the 1800s, and barely documented. The sarcophagus was rectangular, carved from a single limestone block, with an angular lid that bore no markings, except a single spiral etched deep into its center. Inside was a skeleton surrounded by strange items: small copper rods, a woven mesh of plant fiber preserved in clay, and what was described as a smoothed black disc. The body was taller than average, with unusually long fingers and a skull missing its lower jaw. The entire find was loaded onto a cart and transported to St. Louis, where it vanished. The ridge has since been leveled, and most maps no longer mark its original contours. Local lore speaks of the king in stone, a ruler buried apart from the others, whose tomb was not meant to be opened. Whether it was royalty, ritual, or something even more ancient is lost. But the spiral remains, a symbol that reappears again and again in Illinois soil. Caskia was once the capital of Illinois, a thriving town of stone churches, French colonial homes, and early American trade. But in the mid-1800s, the Mississippi River changed course, swallowing the town in slow increments, until it became an island in Missouri. Today, most of old Caskia lies underwater, but during drought seasons, odd remnants emerge: brick outlines of houses, stone well rings, and cobbled paths stretching nowhere. Locals have reported seeing entire stone foundations beneath shallow water, eerily intact. In 2007, a kayaker discovered what looked like an arched cellar door just beneath the current, perfectly preserved, but with no record of what building it belonged to. What makes Kaskiyah strange isn't just its disappearance, but how little was saved. Nearly every artifact, grave and structure was left to drown. No archaeological effort ever mapped it fully. Illinois' first capital has become a phantom, an entire town erased not by disaster, but by neglect. East of Albion, in Edwards County, once stood the town of Wanborough, a planned utopian settlement founded in the 1820s by followers of social reformer Robert Owen. But within a decade, the town collapsed. Residents left, buildings vanished, and no trace of the grid-planned community remained. Today, no signs mark where it once stood. Satellite images reveal faint rectangular impressions beneath farmland, suggesting roads, building lots, maybe even foundations. A 1980s excavation found charred brick remnants and iron tools, but nothing was preserved. Historians argue about what caused the collapse: economic ruin, disease, or internal sabotage. But local folklore hints at something stranger, that Wanborough was abandoned after a string of disappearances and a fire that no one recalled lighting. A place built on idealism faded into obscurity, now remembered only through scattered documents and faint soil patterns, hinting that something stood, however briefly, on Illinois prairie ground. Down a hidden bend of the Illinois River once stood McClure's Bend, a steamboat landing, trading post and farming community that appeared on maps in the early 1800s and then vanished without warning. By 1870, it was gone. The buildings were dismantled or swallowed by floods. But what's curious is the way it disappeared from records. Journals from travelers mention McClure's Bend as a bustling, if muddy, place. Yet census data after 1860 lists no residents. Land deeds were voided, the post office shuttered. In 1994, a sonar scan of the river bend revealed rectangular shapes buried beneath silt and mud, possibly remnants of the dock or riverside warehouses. Still, no archaeological team has investigated. The land is now privately owned, and when researchers sought to gain access, they were met with silence. A community erased not by time, but by redacted memory. McClure's Bend lives only in whispers, maps with fading ink, and a bend in the river where the shoreline feels older than it should. Palestine Ridge, located in southern Illinois, once hosted a frontier village known simply as New Palestine. It had a church, a schoolhouse, and several stone buildings built into the ridge's edge. But in 1903, a fire swept through the ridge, and afterward, the town was never rebuilt. What makes this mystery unusual is that no one can say for certain who lived there. The land was never officially platted, the church was unaffiliated with any denomination, and the graveyard, now barely visible in overgrown woods, holds stones with only initials or symbols, no full names, no dates. In 1976, a team surveying for a hiking trail found old stone steps descending into the ridge itself, leading to a chamber filled with burned timbers and pottery shards. No one claimed it, no one investigated. Today, Palestine Ridge is listed only as a hiking location, but visitors say they feel watched among the trees, and sometimes, the ridge seems to whisper beneath the wind, as if the land remembers a community long forgotten, even if the state does not. In Cumberland County, near the banks of Marrowbone Creek, multiple generations of locals have told the same story. A schoolhouse that appears only on foggy mornings. Elderly residents recall attending a school on that ridge, yet county records list no such building. In the 1980s, a foundation was found, a rectangular stone outline with iron hardware and a crumbling staircase. When researchers attempted to date the structure, they found conflicting evidence. The nails were machine-made, consistent with the 20th century, but the stone was quarried using pre-industrial methods. Local stories claim the school burned in a lightning storm, killing everyone inside, Yet no records of deaths, fires, or missing children exist from the area. Occasionally, hikers report hearing laughter or bells near the creek, though the nearest operating school is miles away. Whether it's a shared hallucination or a forgotten piece of tragic history, the phantom schoolhouse of Marrowbone Creek refuses to be conclusively found or entirely erased. Delavan's Hollow appeared on maps as late as 1892, located west of Peoria, nestled in a low valley surrounded by oak forest. It had cabins, mills, and a known trade route, but after a landslide in the early 1900s, the town was reportedly abandoned. What's puzzling is that modern topography shows no signs of a landslide, and when geologists surveyed the area in 2012, they found something strange. The valley floor had been artificially leveled. Not a collapse, but a clearing. A single stone well still stands, filled with bricks and mud. Locals refused to go near it. One researcher noted signs of burn marks on nearby trees, too old to be recent, but too young to match the supposed timeline. Delavan's Hollow isn't listed in any tourism brochure. There are no signs. But deep in the woods, some still stumble upon the hollow and leave quickly, unwilling to explain what made the birds fall silent and the trees bend inward, as if the land itself remembers something it's trying to hide. In Coles County, east of Charleston, there's a stretch of road where, since the 1960s, people have reported glowing spheres hovering silently in the night sky. Unlike ordinary headlights or aircraft, these lights float inches above the ground, move against wind direction, and sometimes vanish abruptly without a trace. Local legend refers to them as witch lights, but the phenomena have been observed by scientists and skeptics alike. In 1983, a university team installed time-lapse cameras, only to find frames missing or corrupted when the lights appeared. EMF meters spike in unpredictable pulses along the tree line, and even the soil carries an unnatural charge in that narrow band of land. No known geological explanation accounts for it. Residents have reported electronics dying, sudden nausea, or unexplained dizziness in the area. Some believe it's magnetic. Others claim it's residual energy from an ancient event long forgotten. But one thing is certain: whatever dances through the night in Coles County isn't headlights, drones, or fog. It's something older, something intelligent. Outside the ghost town ruins of Boone's Mill, near the Spoon River, there's a nondescript gravel road that appears to defy gravity. Put your car in neutral at the base of the hill, and it rolls uphill. Balls placed on the road do the same. Locals insist it's an illusion, but surveyors have measured the incline and confirmed it truly slopes downward, even though it appears to rise. Some attribute the phenomenon to magnetic fields or underground fault lines, but magnetometers show no anomalies. In the 1970s, a geologist set up precise instruments to measure gravitational deviation. His data showed micro-fluctuations, so small they shouldn't matter, yet enough to affect motion on this short stretch of road. Strangely, animals avoid this path. Deer won't cross it. Birds fly around it. A stone marker once stood near the base of the hill, long since removed, with only the word return etched into its face. Whether optical trick or earth-bending rift, the road at Boone's Mill challenges what we know about the land and what might be buried beneath it. On a quiet path above the bluffs of Starved Rock State Park, there's a peculiar loop of trail where compasses spin erratically. The loop is only about 50 feet in diameter, but it affects all magnetic instruments. Hikers have long reported their phones losing signal, cameras malfunctioning, and birds refusing to nest in the trees nearby. Some claim it's just iron in the rock, but tests reveal no such deposits. In the 1990s, a university study found that the magnetic field in the loop behaves more like a vortex, converging in the center, then dissipating abruptly. What's more unnerving are the historic reports from the area. In 1872, a priest leading a scouting party noted that animals grew frantic and refused to enter a ring of forest, calling it Hollow Land. Today, hikers still report feeling momentary disorientation, strange pressure on their chest, or hearing soft static in their ears while walking the loop. It isn't just off the grid, it's off the map of natural law entirely. Wolf Lake, straddling the Illinois-Indiana border, hides more than just protected wildlife. In a section of the preserve rarely visited, researchers studying migratory birds in 2008 encountered sudden electromagnetic interference. Laptops crashed, wireless signals died, and handheld radios emitted nothing but sharp, repeating pulses. The disturbance was confined to a small patch of forest, about 200 yards across. Soil samples returned elevated, but inconsistent readings of heavy metals, traces of elements not typically found in that region. Later studies ruled out environmental contamination. Yet every few years, reports resurface. Campers with short-circuited gear, drones that fall from the sky, and even a hiker who claimed to see a shimmer in the air, like heat rising off pavement, but cold. Military records note that the area was once considered for communications testing in the 1950s, but then marked as unsuitable, without reason. Wolf Lake's static zone remains unexplained, as if a message was broadcast long ago, and still echoes where no one listens. In the southern region of Illinois known as Little Egypt, there's a pattern of sinkholes that don't behave normally. Rather than forming due to water erosion, these depressions seem to appear overnight, perfectly round, smooth-walled, and with a strange luminescence, reported by those who find them. Farmers have described faint glows rising from the holes at dusk, and some claim their animals refuse to go near the depressions. One sinkhole, discovered in 1991, emitted enough light to be seen from the highway, yet vanished within 48 hours, completely filled without human intervention. Soil samples taken from the rims of two other sinkholes showed odd crystallization, not linked to any known mineral in the area. Geologists are baffled, and most cases are quietly ignored, but folklore keeps the memory alive. Locals say the ground in Little Egypt sometimes opens not to swallow, but to warn, to reveal. And the glow? Some say it's what's left of something buried too deep to name. Beyond the main mounds at Cahokia lies a large open field where very little grows. It's not fenced off, it's not marked, but those who step into it often come out different. Reports include watches, slowing down or speeding up, photos with digital timestamps that don't match reality, and overwhelming sensations of déjà vu or confusion. In one 2005 case, a pair of graduate students conducting a drone scan said they spent 20 minutes inside the field, but their external clock logged over 3 hours. The drone footage was static, corrupted. In the 1970s, a farmer who attempted to build a shed on the site claimed the nails bent mid-hammer and wood warped overnight. He abandoned the project. The land has no known magnetic anomalies, no buried wires, no radioactive materials, and yet it feels wrong, as if the field itself exists between 2 seconds, endlessly stretched. Locals call it the echo patch, and those who enter, they don't always come out remembering it clearly, if they remember it at all. Along the banks of the Vermilion River, amateur geologists in the 1980s uncovered a set of smooth limestone discs with radial notches, almost like gear teeth. Each stone was the same size, about 10 inches across, and nearly identical in shape. While erosion might explain the surface wear, the precision of the grooves left even seasoned professionals unsettled. They weren't tools, they weren't farming equipment, and no ancient culture in the region is known to have used gears, or anything resembling rotary mechanics. The discs were quietly boxed up and stored away. Some believe they were components of a larger system, possibly ceremonial. Others whisper that they weren't made here at all. Were they relics of a lost innovation, or parts of a mechanism we've yet to understand? In 1993, during a fossil dig at Mazon Creek, a strange slab was found nestled among the concretions. It wasn't natural, its surface was flattened and etched, with a grid of parallel lines intersecting at right angles. One edge bore a repeating pattern, like a stylized circuit board. The panel was made of sandstone, but had been hardened unnaturally, almost like fused glass. Most dismissed it as a hoax or artifact of erosion, but no one could explain the precision. The panel vanished soon after its discovery. Researchers who photographed it were later told it was lost in transit. One grad student claimed it was taken by a man with no academic affiliation. The slab has never reappeared. On the outskirts of Salem, Pyramid Mound has long been associated with burial practices, but in 2007, beneath a nearby ridge, archaeologists unearthed a row of stones that produced low-frequency tones when struck. Perfectly spaced and partially buried, the stones resonated like tuning forks. Some tones were inaudible to human ears, felt only in the chest. The discovery was never published in full. Some suspect the mound wasn't just for burial, but for sound. Acoustic testing was halted abruptly, and the ridge was closed to further exploration. Were the stones part of a ritual, or were they designed to transmit something we've forgotten how to hear? Divers, exploring a narrow channel near Peoria, discovered what appeared to be stone-lined pathways running along the riverbed. Too straight and uniform to be natural, the channels were about 2 feet wide, with sidewalls formed of interlocked stone tiles. Covered in silt and algae, they stretched for hundreds of feet before vanishing into the sediment. Sonar scans suggest even longer paths, buried deeper beneath the mud. Historians claim no canal system was built in that location. Yet here they are, roads or conduits, sunk into the river itself. Were they ancient aqueducts, ritual walkways, or part of an unknown civilization's infrastructure lost beneath time and water? Near the Cairo Bluffs, a local hiker discovered a broken clay tablet embedded in a hillside. The fragment was small, but detailed, covered in tightly spaced, unfamiliar glyphs and grooved edges that suggested it once fit into a larger grid. Experts couldn't match the symbols to any known language, and the tablet's hardened surface seemed fired, not sun-dried. Most intriguing was a tiny channel carved into the back, like a locking groove for mechanical placement. Was it a message, a part of an ancient catalogue, or something mechanical? The tablet is now in private hands, unavailable for study, and the rest of the grid, still buried. In 2015, while cataloguing Ordovician fossils near Sugar Creek, a paleontology team discovered a trilobite fossil embedded next to what looked like a metal pin, cylindrical, tapered, and scored with rings like a screw thread. X-ray analysis showed the pin extended deeper into the rock. No mining had occurred there, no industrial runoff. The fossil itself was 400 million years old. The pin, undated, yet undeniably human-like in shape. Officials removed the rock for preservation, but the fossil has never resurfaced. Some suspect it was a fluke, an intrusive contamination. Others say it was real, a glimpse at a timeline that doesn't match ours at all. We've walked across prairies and riverbeds. We've stood at the mouths of caves and under the shadows of lost mounds, and with every footprint, Illinois whispers what textbooks won't, of civilizations unseen, mechanics unclassified, and energies science refuses to name. These aren't just legends or local stories. They're sites, objects, and events that exist, buried, sealed, or quietly erased. Yet, they remain, refusing to fade. The questions are simple. Who built these things? Why were they hidden? And what else lies beneath, waiting to be found? Not by archaeologists, but by those willing to listen when the earth speaks. One thing is certain, Illinois holds mysteries that didn't begin with us, and won't end with us either.